So this is a very difficult thing to do. It almost requires full information, in which case we don't have to do this kind of adjustment measure. If I have full information, I don't need to try and work around it. So we have to come up with some workarounds, some estimation procedures. We're going to look at 2 estimation procedures, and we're going to follow a simple method for both of them. Right? The first is we find the tax reconciliation table. I convert it to dollars if it's in percent, or percent if it's in dollars, so that I have both the percentage table and the dollars table, just like from the example that we worked. Then I determine the taxes for the all equity company. So I'm going to try and figure out the marginal tax rate, and I'm going to multiply that by EBITDA to determine the marginal taxes. Then I adjust all equity taxes for any operating tax credits, and that leaves me at our operating tax rate. Okay. So how does that look like in practice? Let's look. So here's how we convert our tables. Again, you saw this in the example, so I won't spend a lot of time here. You just multiply the percentage listed in the percent table by EBT, each percentage by EBT. That'll give you the dollar amount, and that's how we work our way through what should have been paid, the taxes at the statutory rate minus any credits, to the reported tax rate, which is what's listed on the income statement. That's step 1. It's pretty straightforward. It's just multiplication here. Step 2 is where we start to make some estimation procedures, or we start to make some estimations. What we have to estimate is a way to work our way from the statutory rate and the consolidated EBITDA to some measure that looks at operating taxes. So what we start with is we start with the domestic statutory rate, and we multiply that by our consolidated EBITDA. So 35% times 2.5 billion. That would give us statutory taxes on EBITDA of 875 million. Now we know that's not anywhere near what was reported. We also know it's not anywhere near what was paid, but this is where we start. Step 3 then is we use the tax reconciliation table, and we identify the 2 operating tax credits or rate reductions. And so we know the one-time audit revision isn't operating, but we would know the R&D tax credit is operating because that's in the footnotes. The R&D tax agreement is in the footnotes of the financial statements, and we know that foreign income adjustment is operating because clearly some of the income was earned at a foreign rate that's different and lower. So we would apply the cash taxes to this statutory tax rate. So we'd have 875 million. This is what we would pay if we were only operating in the US and had no other deductions. We subtract the $82 million foreign income adjustment. We subtract the $40 million R&D tax credit, and that is our estimated operating taxes, 753 million. And that would give us an estimated operating tax rate of 30.1%, which is pretty close. It's pretty close to the actual operating taxes, which is 760 million, and pretty close to the actual operating tax rate, which is 30.4%. The difference here is that we don't recognize, and there's no way for us to recognize, that the $50 million in revenue that comes from the asset sale is taxed at the 20% rate, not at the 35% rate. So I should, in step 3, if I really knew, I would have another adjustment here where I would add back $7 million from the savings on the fact that we sold the asset at the lower tax rate. I don't know that. I do this estimating procedure. It actually turns out pretty well here because I don't have a lot of weird income in the foreign subsidiary. This may not be the most effective method depending on the firm. So we have a secondary method which is a little broader. Because it's broader, it's not going to be as close for a firm like this. And this is called the global tax rate. So instead of starting with the domestic statutory rate, I should start with a blended global rate based on the tax rate of the foreign operations or of all the countries where we know the firm has operations. Because I may not know, for instance, that all of the interest and all the other non-operating items are going to be located in just the domestic subsidiary. I have to assume that all that income could be earned evenly. I have to assume that all that stuff could be booked in different countries. This is a better way for, especially for a big global firm, to adjust its rate. So we start with the blended global rate, where the blended global rate is simply the statutory tax rate of 35% minus the foreign income adjustment from the percentage-based table, which is 5.3%. So that gives us a blended global rate of 29.7, and we can assume that this is more or less like the average rate that, or the weighted average rate that the firm is paying. So we multiply that by consolidated EBITDA, we get global taxes on EBITDA of 743 million. Then we subtract the R&D tax credit, again, the operating tax credit, and we get $702 million as our estimated operating taxes at an estimating operating tax rate of 28.1%. Notice that this is a worse estimation here, and it's worse because the majority of the firm's income was, or revenue was, taxed at the 35% higher domestic rate. And we've assumed that now about half and half, so a weighted average, a more significant average of that firm was taxed at a lower rate, which is incorrect. However, we don't know that from the outside, so we don't know whether this will be worse, and this might be better depending on the type of firm. Okay? So we've got to use one of these two methods to estimate the operating tax rate, and that's step one. Step two is to move from the operating tax rate to what we call operating cash taxes. And this all has to do with moving from what we call accrual-based operating taxes to non-accrual-based or cash-based taxes. In other words, lots of companies use different measures like amortization, like accelerated depreciation, and have other deferred tax liabilities or assets that cause the reported taxes to be different than the taxes that are actually paid. And that's the difference between what we call accrual taxes and cash taxes. Cash taxes are the cash literally paid to the government. Accrual taxes are the taxes that we report that may or may not be inclusive of these deferred or accelerated tax options. Okay? The biggest of these accrual-based measures is usually comes from a difference in depreciation schedules, and we'll look at that. So what we want to do is we want to take operating taxes that we just estimate, and then we want to subtract any change in the operating deferred tax liabilities. So this leaves us with two things. First is we need to identify all the deferred tax liabilities and tax assets. And then we need to subtract, or we need to identify it further, the operating deferred tax liabilities and tax assets. And then we only want to subtract here the change in the operating deferred tax liabilities. That gives us cash taxes. So how do we identify these taxes and what do they look like? So the first thing is we need to identify the deferred taxes. And we're going to look at the income tax footnote. And if we look at the income tax footnote for this example firm that we've been using, we're going to see that we have two operating related deferred tax assets, but we have more deferred tax assets than just two. All right, so if we look at the deferred tax assets, we have tax loss carry forwards. Now remember, carry forwards, these are also sometimes called net operating losses or NOLs. This means that we earned a loss in a previous year on income. And when we earn a loss, we have negative taxes, but instead of actually giving us a check for negative taxes, the government gives us a credit, and we are allowed to carry forward that credit for up to 18 years. All right, so tax loss carry forwards could be from losses that are almost 2 decades old, and we're able to use those to continually, as much as we have, we're able to use those to credit our taxes going forward. Right? Warranty reserves. Warranty reserves is kind of an unusual item here. Again, this has to do with a product-based warranty. So a warranty is something that is either sold or provided to with a good that's sold that says if this good breaks down, we'll fix it. Now, the government only recognizes a deductible expense on a warranty. In other words, I'm only allowed to list the cost of fixing this product from a warranty when the product is actually fixed. But the accounting standards allow me to recognize the warranty expense right away. So I can list the expected cost of the warranty as a cost, and that will reduce my my accrual base, my reported taxes. The government doesn't let me do that, and so that causes my cash taxes, my actual taxes, to be higher. In other words, think about warranty reserves as simply a cost that the government won't let me book unless I incur it, but GAAP rules will let me report whether I've incurred it or not. And so they'll let me report in advance. So that causes my accrual taxes to be lower because I have higher costs, so lower EBIT. And it causes my paid taxes, my cash taxes, to be higher than what's reported because the government doesn't let me book that cost yet. Then I have deferred, that's my total deferred tax assets. So these are on the asset side. On the liability side, I've got accelerated depreciation. This is a difference, and we're going to work an example. I think this is can be very confusing, so I'm going to work a difference showing you what accelerated depreciation or deferred depreciation might look like. This is a difference between straight line depreciation for GAAP statements and Maker's accelerated depreciation for IRS statements. And companies prefer accelerated depreciation because they pay lower taxes, and the IRS will let you do that. But GAAP rules require straight line, and so then we're going to have a difference between reported and cash taxes, and we need to adjust for that.